Hello and welcome to Adventures in Theater History, where we bring you the best stories from the deep and fascinating history of theater in the city of Philadelphia. I'm your host, Peter Schmitz, and our theme music is by Christopher Mark Colucci. I'm very glad to say, for the first time in a long time, that much, though not all, of the sound recording for this episode was also done by Chris Colucci. Chris also took the cover photograph for today's episode, showing me, Stacy Maria Dutton, and Charles McMahon standing in front of the Lantern Theater's awning on Ludlow Street. Today we are going to talk with them about the history of the Lantern, another one of those iconic nonprofit Philadelphia theater companies that was started in the late 20th century. And this is, in fact, the episode that I promised you all back in episode 117 in February. And you may recall that at the end of that episode, I talked about the Lantern's first ever production, Waiting for Godot, up there on the third floor studio space of the Walnut Street Theater, a few blocks away from their current location. But it's been a busy few months for me since then. And in fact, I've only just gotten around to editing down the sound files and getting ready to release those interviews for you, which I'm so happy to do so now. Now, I say interviews because, for reasons of scheduling, I couldn't get both Charles and Stacy in the same place at the same time. So I spoke to the Lantern Theater's artistic director, Charles McMahon, in person first, and then I talked to the Lantern's executive director, Stacy Dutton, afterwards over Zoom. But let's begin with that conversation with Stacy first. Here we go. All right, Stacy Maria Dutton. In 2016, this press release came out. It reads, Dateline, Philadelphia. Lantern Theater Company has named Stacy Maria Dutton as its first executive director, effective immediately. In partnership with co-founder and artistic director Charles McMahon, Dutton will oversee the company's administration with a focus on development. Prior to her work in non-for-profit organizations, she worked in investment management. She was recognized by the Arts and Business Council of Greater Philadelphia as the 2011 Business On Board Member of the Year. Stacy Maria Dutton, welcome to Adventures in Theater History.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Peter.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here. Now, that's a standard sort of corporate press release language, but I want to hear from you in a way that you would like to tell us. What's your origin story?
So I grew up in Washington, D.C., and connecting to what's happening in the present day, the Kennedy Center opened in Washington when I was about 10 years old. And it really transformed my life and, for many decades, Washington, D.C.'s cultural scene. I had the great pleasure of seeing a very young James Earl Jones in Of Mice and Men at the Kennedy Center in the early 70s. And even though I was a very young theater goer at the time, amazing things were happening on stage. And that was the true origin of my life as a theater goer.
Well, you have developed a special affection, I understand, for the musical 1776.
It's a little obsessive, yes. I saw 1776 as a child. It must have been a Broadway tour, now that I think about it, because we saw it at Wolf Trap, not long after Wolf Trap opened. And then once the film came out, it became a Dutton family tradition to watch it every July 4th. And I was surprised to learn that not every family does this.
Well, I think it perhaps was a presage that Philadelphia was in your future there somewhere. And I hope that you will come to the Walnut Street Theater's upcoming production of 1776.
Well, I will be the annoying audience member singing along.
I don't think you're going to be the only one. And then you went on to a business career. We're not at Philadelphia History of Business. So if you could be succinct about how your career went on from there.
Yeah, no, very briefly. I first came to live in Philadelphia when I attended Wharton Business School in the 1980s.
Okay.
And then a career in London, New York, Boston. Also using a lot of business travel to see theater all around the country and in London, which was enriching, I think, my cultural life as I grew up. The highlight of which was seeing the world premiere of Arcadia with Rufus Sewell and the original cast in London in the mid-90s. But a family move brought me back to Philadelphia, still working in investment management in 2004. And I had children, elementary, middle school age at the time. And I realized that Philadelphia was going to be where they grew up. It was going to be their hometown, really. And I thought it important for me to find ways to connect to Philadelphia beyond work and school. You know, you are a parent.
We came here about the same time with about the same issues. Yes.
So I heard about very quickly and attended immediately the Business on Board program, then run by the Arts and Business Council, which was just wonderful. It trained business people to serve on nonprofit boards. And because it was the Arts and Business Council, all of the nonprofits they were connecting to were arts and culture organizations. This happened so early upon my return to Philadelphia that I hadn't even had a chance to get to know all the theater companies that had, of course, been established since I lived here in the 80s. And they connected me, you know, I described probably a love of classic theater, classical theater, and they said, oh, you should serve on the Lantern Board.
Oh, great.
And I think they were right, or I think that was the right artistic match for me.
And so when did you first come to see a Lantern production?
It would have been 2005. And I should remember, I should go back into our ticketing system and find out. I can tell you, though, the moment that I knew that I was going to become very dedicated to Lantern Theater Company. And it was actually, it was a snowy winter night, which had scared a lot of the audience away. I think there were 16 of us in the audience to see Frank Eck in a solo performance of Novecento. And I was just amazed at the caliber of the acting and the staging.
Frank X is an amazing actor, isn't he?
Yeah. And, you
know, wonderful person, an amazing actor.
Theater company in Center City, Philadelphia. I sort of connected the dots that I'm a board member, so part of my mission ought to be to make sure that more than 16 people saw that show. You know, that's when I really dove in as an independent board member in terms of bringing people to the theater and increasing my own personal financial support for the Lantern. You know, people ask, what do you want in a board member? And the first thing is always, they have to love the work on stage. There's just no point otherwise, because you're not going to bring friends and family. You're not going to your personally important level of financial support unless that's why you're participating.
So it's not just about social aggrandizement and showing off to your friends. You have to really like what you're doing. Well, that's great. I think you are an ideal board member, obviously. So what are the joys that you get from the Lantern Theater and working at the Lantern that you can't get elsewhere in the business world? For a business person, what is the joy of working on an arts organization?
Well, I will tell you, it's much harder. Just the day-to-day is much harder, right?
Really? Why?
Well, in investment management is a great example. I mean, you're very pampered. I mean, you've got hot and cold running IT support and beautiful offices and all the resources you want. And in the not-for-profit professional theater sector, you don't, right?
You astound me. Really?
We're all resource starved. So you really do have to love it because the obstacles are numerous. I think I really loved my career in investment management. I was in a kind of role which was highly analytical. That skill set certainly has translated to my current work at the Lantern, right? I mean, you're constantly analyzing ticket sales and marketing trends and development and fundraising to critique your own efforts and then how you can improve them. So I got to a point where I took a sabbatical from investment management to work on a political campaign, and originally assumed I would go straight back. And then I just found I was sort of young enough to think, oh, I could have a chapter 2 doing, mission-based work. With hindsight, I would have been of greater use to the Lantern had I stayed in investment management, but that is a different story. And I was still an independent board member. I started volunteering more at the time and actually for the remaining future. For example, the Lantern did not have a dedicated development person or grant writer. So there were lots of ways in which board members could help if they had the time and the skill set to do so.
Right.
And
Well, that's what's really, since you began to really take on that work, especially development work, the Lantern has grown by leaps and bounds. By the time you became executive director, it had an operating budget of 1.3 million and was really beginning to become an audience leader in the area as well, overtaking other such well-known companies as we've already talked about, including the Philadelphia Theater Company and the Wilma Theater Company, just in terms of audience engagement.
Yeah, well, the Lantern has a secret weapon. We have a great artistic director.
Who we are talking to. In just a moment, we will play our interview with Charles McMahon as soon as we're done with this section.
And I say that because I think there's two things that any theater company needs in an artistic director, and that is someone who, one, is a great theater artist in their own right. And so they understand how to produce work of excellence. And the second is an artistic director who really wants to be engaged in this iterative dialogue with their audience over long periods of time, because that dialogue, which takes place both directly and implicitly through ticket sales, are what help you to build up a patron base. That's what makes you sustainable.
So there have been literally dozens of productions since you began to get more directly involved with producing the work there. Name one or two that stand out to you. Like, that's why I'm here. This was great. And I really feel like I helped make this happen.
Well, there's a little bit of a through line from what I mentioned, seeing Frank X and solo performer show in Novecento, to, for example, when the Lantern produced Arcadia in 2014, I believe. But because we made a lot of decisions along the way to keep reinvesting in the artistic side of the company. And
you've invested again and again in actors who appear regularly there, in directors that work regularly, in designers that work regularly there.
And you have to make, I think, a theater company has to make a very explicit commitment to that, because otherwise you just sort of skate along doing the same thing. So you have to say, okay, we're going to go from SPT, small professional theater, 6 contract to 8 contract, or, I'm going to increase designer fees and designer budgets so that the production values on stage are higher.
And you were able to raise money from was it the Wincott Foundation or the Haas Foundation that provided for specific funding to be able to do
for the Lantern Theater Artist Fair Pay Initiative, right? So that when we increased our Actors Equity contract level, that was the board of directors, the Wincott Foundation, and several key supporters, because you can't do that unilaterally. You have to front load the support. And once we committed to that strategy in coming out of the financial markets crisis of 2008, 2009, it was a very consistent progress. I mean, not dramatic overnight, although the production that probably showed us how successful it could be was New Jerusalem by David Ives, about Spinoza.
17th century Dutch philosophy.
That is a great example. I think I was the board chair then. We did not and do not get involved in artistic planning. But when Charles brought that and said, hey, this is what I've planned for the, I think, 2011-12 season, which was still, like coming out of COVID, that was still a period of,
retrenchment,
and then everybody had to rebuild again. And I was like, okay, well, that'll be the loss leader for the season. And he was absolutely right. It was hugely successful, and we actually brought it back the next season on a non-subscription basis. But it was a good example because it was a much bigger cast than the Lantern was used to employing outside of Shakespeare plays, on a subject that the artistic director just intuited his audience would love. And he was right about that.
Well, tell us, I know that you spoke about COVID right there, and I know COVID was a particular challenge for the company, both financially and artistically. Although oddly, there were new opportunities presented itself, and it seems like the Lantern took full advantage of them. How did you skate through that period of, basically 2 years of downtime?
Yeah, so I think we all woke up, the next day, what was that, March 14th?
2020,
and thought, oh, okay, well, we'll have a few weeks of quiet, maybe a few months of quiet. And then about 2 weeks into it, we became very restless and itchy. And Charles said, we're going to become a film company. And I, of course, thought he meant was just blue sky dream. Don't be ridiculous. That is so beyond our capabilities. And he was correct. I was incorrect.
Well, it started with just, like a lot of things, the Zoom meetings. I remember being on a production of Love's Labor's Lost that we did over the Zoom room. And that, it had its challenges and but you went on from there to create actually produced stage dramas.
Yeah, we did several Zoom readings, which, they were attracting a few hundred audience members,
right,
which was fun. And we felt particularly for the Lantern, it was absolutely essential that we remain in close touch with our patrons. And I say that because I think the larger theater companies with beautiful buildings, the Arden, the Wilma, the Walnut, Philadelphia Theater Company, I think they could go into COVID knowing or feeling more secure that when this is over, our patrons will come back. But when you're a smaller theater company
in a theater around the corner down sort of a dark alley, right?
In a really, really challenging performance venue, you're always aware that they could disappear, right? I mean, one wrong step and they'll be like, never coming back to this terrible building again. So we knew we needed to keep in touch through artistic programming. And after several Zoom readings, Charles's ambitions, I think, deepened. And we began to plan a series of plays that could be produced in St. Stephen's, in that performance space, safely, because nobody was vaccinated then yet. We identified a small professional filmmaker, actually out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, called Natural Light Productions, to film them and edit them. The first play was Me and the Devil, which was a one-man play by and directed by Steve Broadnax, then teaching the MFA acting program at Penn State, now the artistic director at Arkansas Rep. Charles completely redid our performance space. All the seating went away. A large transparent wall was essentially built between the film crew and the actor. And we started producing plays specifically to be filmed and streamed at home. So we went on then, Me and the Devil, Molly Sweeney by Brian Friel, a 3-monologue play. Right. And so each actor could be filmed individually, safely. And by then it was probably the spring of 2021 and people started getting vaccinated. And so we could then begin to envision casts working together on stage, but knowing that audience members were still not interested in returning, we licensed a wonderful adaptation of The Plague by Camus that we filmed.
Very apt.
Yeah, yes. It was awesome. I mean, It was incredibly moving, both for the actors. And so even though that play is a symbolic one, right, about fascism and totalitarianism in Europe in the mid-20th century, through the lens of what we were all just still living through.
Right. Well, you then went on to go back and put things back on stage. I remember certainly The Rise of Arturo Ui by Bertolt Brecht, another topical subject. So the Lantern is once again staging top-notch production for people in person, which is great. But there are other things. This is the interesting thing about the Lantern is that you are expanding. You are going in new directions in terms of space. So we're going to talk about this with Charles as well, but tell us about the exciting plans that the Lantern has for his future. I know you were disappointed in bidding for the Arts Bank space, which is on the corner of South and Broad, which was part of the bankruptcy sale for the UArts building, but you were outbid by a private developer, and the judge ended up giving it to him, and there was, I'm sure, good and legal reasons, but you have not let that deter you. What? There is something brewing in Germantown in Northwest Philadelphia.
In Mount Airy on Germantown
Avenue. On Germantown Avenue.
So we have a long-term lease on a former Presbyterian church, and we're about to begin an interior renovation to make it into a spectacular 180-seat flexible Black Box theater. We had been looking for some time, mostly in Center City. This opportunity, which is going to prove, I think, very cost effective, presented itself. Very accessible for Northwest Philadelphians, for residents of Southeastern Montgomery County, and I think over time, the main line. We're really excited about this. It'll enable us to have a permanent home for our Christmas Carol, our Shakespeare production for student audiences. We will be located very close to Quintessence. And
and that's the other thing. You'll have a symbiotic relationship with another classical theater company.
They definitely have, I think, a strong student matinee program. So I live about 5 minutes away. I see the school buses lined up on Germantown Avenue when they have student matinees, so I know they can find it.
Right. Well, so just to end, and again, Stacy, we can take this out if you don't want to talk about it, but Philadelphia is notable, I think, for the number of committed couples who are making their lives together in nonprofit local theater world. But other people have told me that it's good to be anchored to someone who's outside the vagaries of the theater world, that if one person is going to be in this highly challenging world, that somebody else needs to be outside it. But you and Charles have been together for a while now. Does it make your relationship richer or more challenging to be partners in art?
Both. We certainly have not we don't have any downtime, right? I mean, we don't say, okay, we're at dinner, let's not talk about the lantern, or let's not talk about theater. We've not succeeded in creating those boundaries. While I can see having someone outside of theater would be very healthy for a couple, I definitely can see that. But you know better than anyone, it's such a challenging lifestyle. Nights, weekends. I think it would be very challenging for a non-theater partner to adapt to this. So it ends up being a win-win. And it definitely has, for me, right, because I was coming to this career relatively late in life, it helped me to get up to speed much faster, I think, than I could have if I didn't have a constant source of expertise to tap into all the time.
Okay.
So it's worked out. It's worked out well.
I'm so glad. Well, Stacy, thank you for talking to us today. This has been fantastic to get your voice and the voice of someone who's really working on the producing and board side of things, which has been essential for navigating, the challenges of how to keep a nonprofit company going, that things will succeed if there's good management behind it. So it's great to have your perspective on this. So we're now going to switch over to talk to Charles, and we'll see what he has to say about these same questions. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Peter.
So here's my conversation with Charles, which took place on the stage of the Lantern Theater, right on the set of Blues for an Alabama Sky by Pearl Cledge. Now, as it turned out, in real life, this conversation with Charles lasted over 2 hours. Chris's microphones are right in front of us, and his iPhone was recording the whole thing on video. It was a very wide-ranging conversation, covering everything from Charles's early life growing up in Philadelphia and elsewhere, with a period in England as well. We discussed his family, his education, his fascination with science, music, and drama, his apprenticeship in carpentry and building trades, just so much that it ranged well beyond the purpose of the podcast. So, to sum it all up for you, I'll just report that Charles is a polymath with many interests and skills. As we pick up the story around the year 1994, his choice of the name Lantern Theater, spelled quite properly with an E-R at the end, was meant to evoke the image of raising a lantern of truth and inquiry into the world around us. Here's my selection of Charles's stories about the history of the company that he has led for the last 3 decades. Nonprofit status, you're getting a board of your own. Where have you recruited a board from?
There were 2 people who were early adopters. One was Jay Goldberg, who was a friend of my parents.
Okay.
They'd met him, I think, at the Henley Regatta or something like that.
All right, so you have people who have a little money, right, a little time, and are willing to invest in you. They know your family, they know, they trust you.
Jay was a theater and Philadelphia sports enthusiast.
Okay.
He was a partner at Wolf Block.
Okay.
And a lovely guy. And then there was Tricia O'Halloran,
right,
who was our first board chair. And her ex-husband, in fact, Harry Halloran, was a person I had consulted very early on about building energy-efficient houses. Harry was an...
All right, but we're going to get you out of those houses, Charles. We're going to get you into this theater. Because at that point, about 1995... I mean, the Arden, who also started on the 3rd floor, has moved here. We're sitting right now. I should mention this. We're sitting right now on the stage.
So in 1994, of the origin.
Right.
Yeah, the first full-time home of the Arden.
Right.
Yeah, because they'd been peripatetic. Now I had seen their production of As You Like It, which they did over on Penn's Landing.
Right.
Aaron Posner directed that.
Right.
A cast of maybe 8.
Yep.
And I think I saw one thing in here. I think I saw their Hamlet in this room.
Okay.
Years and years ago.
And did you think when you saw them that space, this space works? I can make this space work?
No, I didn't think that about it. I didn't think that was not how I reacted to it.
Because when they leave this space and they move to their new place over, they take everything with them.
Everything.
Right? Because they owned it. They paid for it.
The
right?
room was,
right.
Yeah, everything was gone.
The Reverend Flood.
The floor was gone. The risers
rector
were
of St.
gone.
Stephen's, who's now to the west of us right now, was like, I've got this space and I've got to get the income back from that for my congregation.
Well, he actually, I think he really liked the idea of there being a theater here.
Mm-hmm. No, not a working congregation.
It is not, and it was a very small congregation, even when it was an actual parish, because the residential area here has collapsed.
Right. Yes. Well, after the 1920s, things changed a lot.
Yeah.
So this building was built in the mid 1920s as to be a community center.
Yes.
And then the community went away.
That stage there's that proscenium there. It used to go back another 7 feet in what's now the dressing room. Obviously,
I've been in those.
But this is a concrete stage here.
Right.
There were films. There were 2 carbon arc film projectors in that booth there. And they had a chimney for the for the carbon monoxide.
Right.
And they showed USO films here during the war.
Okay.
The thing is that when the building was built, there was a thriving community here, but in the Great Depression, that started to collapse.
But I'm interested that when you came in here and you started staging plays, and were you doing like 4 shows? Was it classic 4 shows a season?
No. So at this point, we didn't have any funding, so we were financing everything, as best we could.
Right.
So I think the first show we did, we ended up losing between us only $600 because we got a really nice review on that Waiting for Godot, but from Doug Keating.
Right.
And we had the most wonderful thing. This Polish actor named Adam Mularczyk, who had played Lucky in the only production of Waiting for Godot in Poland during the communist era, came to see our production on a Sunday matinee when we had pretty good audiences, but we had one Sunday matinee where like 5 people showed up.
Right.
Well, one of them was this guy, Adam Mularczyk, who comes with his wife. So, I'm there washing off all the white stuff on my head and my face and my hair. And I'm feeling a little bit like, well, that was kind of a tough one there, that one. And Miles Thompson was our stage manager on that, and he comes back and he says, there's a guy in the lobby who really wants to meet you guys. So I go out, and this guy like runs the length of the lobby. He's like a very frail old man, and he throws his arms around me and he says, "My competition!" And it turns out he's brought this suitcase full of Polish theater memorabilia. And he says, "I come to see this. I really want to see this. I'm thinking if this is good, yeah. If it's bad, I just right down the elevator." But he loved it. It had a profound effect on me. I mean, this guy was a very, very serious theater practitioner and very serious about theater. And he shows me this copy of Teatr Polska from the 1950s, and there's a photograph of him as Lucky, the only production that was banned immediately after this.
Amazing.
It's not Soviet realist enough or whatever, socialist real.
Well, they end up doing a lot of interesting Polish theater. If they were going to ban that one, I think the other thing, there's a lot of Grotowski they could ban.
Well, that's true.
The Lantern has had a commitment to producing quite a number of playwrights. Shakespeare in particular seems to be almost an annual offering here. You must get funding at some point from somebody saying, "We'll back you." Is the city helping out? Is there the William Penn Foundation coming in?
No.
Who's backing you?
No, that's years away.
All right, who's backing you?
Well, for one thing, we were doing things very cheaply.
Okay.
I was building a lot of the scenery.
What were some of the early productions that seemed to things
So
must be going well?
So we did Waiting for Godot again. We
right.
did it at the
Annenberg.
At the Annenberg.
Yes.
A much more expensive house, but also bigger.
Right.
And we draw a lot more people
Okay.
there. So we're selling tickets.
And you're developing a mailing list. I hope you're.
We're developing a mailing list.
Right.
We're doing some swaps with other companies, and we're selling tickets. And we're getting small donations from people, $100 here, $100 there. And we do start to get things like from the Cultural Fund, did get a couple of big grants. I mean, people, giving us $20,000 or more. We're doing some benefits and galas, but there's not a lot of money, and nobody's full time. I'm still doing construction jobs,
Right.
and
So you're not really able to pay yourself in a way that support yourself.
No.
When do you reach that point? When do you reach the point that, hey, I can have a salary.
Gosh.
I can hire other people. I
Well,
can
the first
make
time-
an equity contract. When does that happen?
We were paying equity contracts right from the get-go, from the beginning. We don't do small professional theater until maybe 97 or so.
Okay.
I think the first one was probably Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. And I don't join the union until then.
Right.
I think I join when we do that play. But I mean, we couldn't afford to pay me through the union, so for the first few years.
Right, but you're able to start, I just want to move the story forward.
Sure.
You're able to start having regular seasons. You're able to say,
Yes.
let's program these 4 plays. Let's hire these actors. Let's have these auditions. People will come back here. The Reverend Flood was obviously supporting you, getting you a lighting grid, getting you instruments, getting air conditioning installed. And at what point do you realize we're doing it? This is going. We're going to come back every year. We can keep building on this.
Probably.
When does that sink in?
Probably somewhere around 97, 96, 97.
Yeah.
That we are doing things regularly. Everything at this point, there are reviewers in Philadelphia, which who are.
Well, there's the city papers, and there's the
city
Philadelphia Weekly.
There are the 2 free weeklies,
right? And there's the Inquirer.
they've got their stringers. I mean, and at this point, it's I think it's Carrie Mazer and Toby Zinman, who are local academics. They're not theater critics.
But you're also building up a coterie of actors that you work with again and again.
Yes.
And this is the thing that I really notice about this period, the mid-'90s, late '90s. A lot of actors start coming here and saying, "I can live here, I can work here, I can do the kind of things I want to do."
But there's a trickle of people. There are people who are delaying their trip up to New York at this point. So people like Russ Woodall, and Russ disappears to New York for several years. He was in several of our earlier productions.
Right.
There are people who are, who you see around town, like Tony Lawton.
Right. Well, there's people coming out of the Temple program like Tony.
Right.
And there's people
but they're all going to New York eventually.
Well, not all of them. Like Frank X. You start working with Frank X.
Yes,
here.
we started working with Frank in maybe 97, 98.
Yeah.
And I'd seen him in a bunch of things and loved his work. And then there's, Ashley Izzard, who's another tremendous actor from the Temple program. There are a few very good actors who can form the core of a cast of maybe 10, but not just a vast talent pool. But you're right, it does start to become a kind of a magnet for people from New York.
Right.
And that coincides with the Fringe Festival. In my opinion, that is the catalyst. So look at the landscape so 95, the Arden has just moved into Old City from here. Yeah. Here they can accommodate maybe 170 people. They can accommodate like 200 in the second floor theater there, because they don't open the first floor theater there for several more years.
I know, but the Walnut's still putting on shows. They're doing big musicals.
The Walnut's doing the big musicals.
The Drama Guild has gone bust.
The Drama Guild has gone bust. Right. The big regional theater in the 1,000-seat house or 1,100-seat house.
Does that leave an opening for companies like yours, do you think?
Not a big one. Most of their subscribers probably went to the Arden.
Okay.
So it's probably a big boon for them, because they're in a pretty nice location.
So what's the audience that you develop? Who's coming to see you?
Teachers, administrators at schools, scientists, people from Jefferson, Penn, Temple.
We're in the immediate neighborhood here.
Stacy has said that like the quintessential Lantern Theater patron is a retired Philadelphia public high school teacher.
Well, that's wonderful. God bless them.
Librarians.
That's great.
People who are scientific researchers.
Right.
And also people who just, took a chance on something.
Right.
Who are not sort of traditional theater people and went, wow.
Right. But
I mean,
between the years
there's
2000,
a guy who comes to
right.
every first preview, and he's been coming to every first preview for about 30 years. Not a typical theater goer,
right.
but he comes to everything. And, I see him every single time. The very first show, he's always there, watching the play right out of the gate, the freshest version of it that he can get. And I think that one of the things that I pride myself on is that I think anybody should be able to come to your theater and connect and engage with the material.
But the people that you start hiring, that's what I want to point out here. The Lantern Historic has had a commitment to getting people who are in Philadelphia to be working theater artists. Your designers are almost all local. Chris Gallucci who is sitting with us in the room right now. He has worked on dozens of shows here.
Every so often,
building the community that you're serving.
That's absolutely what we wanted, because that's ultimately what it's about, is community. I mean, the experience that I had that convinced me that Philadelphia was the place where I wanted to do theater, and this is what I wanted to do, was that connection with a big community of people who came to see The Tempest and were moved by it.
Right.
They didn't know why, they didn't know what it was about it, but they were moved. They felt like they were witnessing something and taking part in something that was meaningful.
Right.
And magical.
But you're able to offer them.
And you can't have that unless you have a community.
Okay.
This is okay. So you're getting to a point. Philadelphians never believe anything good about Philadelphia unless they hear it from somebody from out of town. Lived in London. I've lived in New York. I've seen theater all around the world. And I will say for absolute certain, there are things that we can do here that you cannot do in New York or London. For instance, last year, we put together a creative team for The 39 Steps, which is a boulevard comedy.
Sure.
It's been done a million times.
Yeah.
We had this idea. The actors, the designers, the production team, Kate and Scott, had this idea to do this play as a series of really interesting stylistic choices that were both mimicking film and what you can do in film, but also parodying it at the same time.
Right.
And to create a piece of theatrical storytelling that was maybe incorporating some ideas stolen from other theater makers, but was also doing something different and new.
Right.
And that cast, I could not have found those people to do that in New York. I go and see plays in New York all the time, and what you see are a lot of very good, very accomplished individual performers. What you don't get on a consistent basis is the level of deep ensemble work that you get here. Now there are outfits like the Wooster Group and I suppose the Elevator Repair Service and some outfits like that are all about deep ensemble work. But that's
Seth Rosen talked to us about what he regards it as. There's a big repertory company that is shared amongst all the various
and that
theaters.
is absolutely true. Here's the thing: we're downtown. There is no immediate residential neighborhood here.
Sure.
We are in the middle of the donut hole.
Right.
And our location creates a very high threshold of entry for people psychologically.
What are you doing here that makes those people come back to see it? This is such well-produced work. I've got to find it here. I will come into this rather scary-looking alley to come and see this.
Because
of this space, you do have to work sort of in the corner here mostly. You have one bank of seats there and one bank there. There's a little balcony there, which is really for latecomers.
Yes.
I have seen other setups. You've done some theater in the round or some alley.
We've done a few of those.
Right. And occasionally you've actually moved. You did one show at the Plays and Players. You did Man for All Seasons over at the Plays and Players.
Yes, we did that because we couldn't get that. We couldn't do that play in this space.
Right.
It was just too big.
Right. But you've also made a definite commitment, and I've noticed this over the past dozen years, you made a definite commitment to working with African-American playwrights and supporting African-American cast. Doing The Royale, you did Marco Ramirez's play about the African-American boxer, which was a fantastic production. You won the 2023 Barrymore for outstanding overproduction of a play. But it wasn't just playing for. It wasn't like you were saying, "Oh, we'll bring in a black audience with that." I mean, certainly you did, but that fed your regular audience just as much. You discovered
So I mean, the thing about
that material will play.
I mean, one of the great points of theater, one of the things that theater does that normal life doesn't do, is it gives us a safe space to experience dangerous things. I mean, to some degree, we're trying to get people to walk through the door for the very first time, but we're also trying to get people to come back. We're also in this dialogue with them. The question is, what can we offer them that's familiar enough for them to be interested? But
you're holding up the lantern. You're saying,
yes, but we're also
look at this, and also confront yourself. Yes.
So there's some novelty, but there's some familiarity that people need from us, and we are about connecting with the people and offering them something very nourishing to eat, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. So we need to, that is our philosophical underpinning. It's different from the Wilmas.
And how is it different from the Arden, say, which is on the other side?
Well, the Arden is...
You're covering some of the same material and playwrights as they're doing, yeah?
Probably, yeah, I say...
You're certainly not competing with a Walnut. That's a different crowd.
No, we're not.
Which is right nearby.
And most of the material choices are very different, too.
You're not doing musicals. What productions has the Lantern done that you've done well over 100?
Yeah.
Every year there's 4 or 5 more. So, and you've now been in it for 30 years. You've been at it, so that adds up.
Yeah.
But what productions the Lantern that certainly stick out in your memory? That was what I came here to do. There was the Richard III that was in the early.
Oh 2000s, yes, that was
Pete Pryor.
Pete Pryor as Richard III, absolutely. Yeah. I thought his Henry IV and Falstaff. He played Henry IV and Falstaff in that production. Just a couple of years later was also pretty tremendous.
What about Frank and King Lear?
Frank and King Lear, absolutely. I learned so much, and I think Frank learned so much from that production. That was huge. Also, Death and the King's Horseman was another huge one.
Right, the Wole Soyinka, which is almost never done.
Which is almost never done, and Wole Soyinka was here. He came and spoke. So Penn, University of Pennsylvania, flew him out. They gave him an award.
Good for them.
And his remit was he was going to come and see Death and the King's Horseman, our production here, and do an audience talk after the production. And the next day, he was going to receive this award at Penn, and he was going to speak about human rights in Africa. I mean,
that's amazing.
It was like we had a friend at Penn.
Right,
who said, "Wonder if we can get Wole Soyinka out here for this production." Yeah, I mean, what a fascinating human being, and what just an extraordinarily accomplished guy. I didn't realize it at the time we chose the play, but he'd been my next door neighbor when we lived in Cambridge.
No kidding?
Yes, he lived.
You didn't remember this Nigerian man with a big, deep voice?
I did remember a Nigerian man with a big, deep voice, and I remember his rather extraordinary clothing hanging up on the lines that we had and all that. What I didn't know is that was the playwright of that play, and my mother told me actually because I was only 12 at the time. I didn't know. He had not won the Nobel Prize at that point.
All right.
But
that's amazing that you have that deep a connection with him. Tell us about the exciting plans for 30, and you're not leaving this space. No?
We are staying. So this is what people keep saying. You're moving to Mount Airy. No, we're not moving to Mount Airy. We are developing a second theater in Mount Airy, and we're keeping our regular subscription series of new plays downtown. And part of the
how are you going to do 2 theaters at the same time?
Well,
do you have the staff? Do you have the mental space?
So for the last several years, and for several years before COVID, we were operating in 3 theaters around town. We were operating here. We were doing 5 productions a year here in this building, which is frankly too many. We were doing play at the Independent Seaport Museum for high school students only, and we were doing holiday show, Tony Lawton's Christmas Carol over at the
I love Tony's one-man Christmas Carol.
We were looking at potentially putting in a second high school production so that the teachers would have a bit more choice from season to season, because it turns out not everyone wants to see the same play every year.
Oh, can't you only do Romeo and Juliet so many times, huh? All right.
Yeah, and at the same time, the sine qua non here is, for us to do a play, we have to love it. Right. This has to be something that we know that we can keep digging into every day for 6 months.
So what kind of material are you going to do out there that you wouldn't do?
Well, that's the thing. We only do plays that we love, but we don't do all the plays that we love, because we do a subscription season, and we're serious about that. I mean, in order for us to exist, we need to constantly bring in patrons. We cannot be one of those theaters that says, well, the subscription model is dead. I hear that all the time. And basically, when people say that, what they mean is, I don't want to be tied to having to rule out plays that I might want to do that our subscribers
will drive people away.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
fall into the Drama Guild hole where you lose your subscribers and then suddenly you're in a death spiral.
Yes, and that is exactly what happened to them. And I will say, for having observed what the Drama Guild was doing in the early 90s, their work was unquestionably better in that period than it was previous.
Yeah.
The 80s, they were an okay regional theater. The early 90s, they were an exceptionally good regional theater, but they did lose all their subscribers. And I mean, I noticed that. I hadn't spoken with others. Obviously, you have, but that is what happened.
One of the first people I talked to was Mary Robinson.
Mary Robinson.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a shame, because she was doing extraordinary work there.
Right. Well, in a time, in a time when a lot of cities are losing their regional theater companies. I just was talking to my friend who still lives in New Haven. He's like, Long Wharf is gone, Pete. It's gone.
Well, post-COVID is brutal.
Right. Well, you had a brutal time during COVID, which you guys got through in an amazing way.
Well, we became a film company in COVID. We produced a lot of movies.
Right. And I know Stacy Maria Dutton, you're now the business manager and board, and your partner in Life and Crime has been really great at organizing the finances and that. But I'm amazed, and I want to end on this. Why do you feel that in a time when other companies are pulling back, are sort of shrinking a little bit, that you can expand, you can do more?
Okay, first of all, you can't cut your way to growth. It does not work. Right. You need to present a new, interesting, exciting idea. Now, we've been growing our audience back.
Right.
I mean, it's every year since COVID, it's gotten bigger.
Right.
It's still below what it was prior.
Are your runs just as long?
The runs are not as long.
Right. So I know the Walnut and the Ardent cut the length of their runs.
So our base run used to be 5.5 weeks. Now 5.5 weeks would constitute an extension for us. So the base run is not as long. We've gone from 8 performances a week to 7 performances a week, and we've gone from 5 plays in the subscription season to 4.
Okay, so you have pulled back some.
We have pulled back some. You need to have a certain level of occupancy to make it make sense financially. Right. To do the plays, and we do rely on audiences.
Right, and you guys did make a point for the Arts Bank. You really tried to get the bankruptcy court.
We had a signed contract for that. It did end up in bankruptcy court. It
kills me that you guys didn't get that, but I'm wondering.
So we have been looking for a new downtown space for over a decade. We've actively looked and we've put in offers, we've made negotiations with the Arts Bank. We actually had a signed contract for that building.
And then the judge wouldn't take it. But instead, you've gotten this. You're converting a church in Northwest Philadelphia, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So we have a long-term lease on that building. We're going to be able to perform in that all the programming that we had previously had to rent other facilities around town. So actually being able to do those productions in facilities that we control. Right. A single place where we control it, where we have our own material there, we have our own lighting grid, we have our own everything.
So can you tell us what's the first thing you want to do there? Yeah, can you give us a hint?
I could, but I won't because we have a play that we have acquired the rights to. It's actually set in Philadelphia.
I'm always pleased to hear that.
Yeah, it's by somebody who grew up in Philadelphia, a playwright of some note. It would not be the first production, but it would certainly be the local premiere.
Okay.
And I'm not going to name it yet because we haven't announced it. So
all right. When it happens, you'll let me know.
You certainly will be among the first to know. But we will be doing our student productions there. We'll be doing our holiday production, and we have a list of productions that we think will get a better treatment there, where we have a better chance of building an audience for them than in here, where we need that play to be part of a subscription. See, everything here, it's like you're putting together a prefix menu at a fine restaurant. The dishes have to complement each other in just such a way. You can't have anything that's sort of out of place there. Right. Theater-going cues outside of Center City are vastly different. Center City is like the medieval market town. It's the place with the cathedral and and the sheriff and the courts and the local government, and then all the things of great value apart from the artisans who are local are produced out in the farming villages. Right. That's where that's the model that People's Light and the Hedgerow have been using for a long time. Yes, and it's incredibly effective. Now, in post-COVID, even more so, because one thing that Philadelphia Center City had that those other places didn't have is massive amounts of knowledge workers coming in every day, and then maybe they'll stay to have dinner and see a show. Now they don't. Right. Now they don't. They don't come in on Friday. Yeah. A lot of them don't come in on Monday, not that we care, we're usually dark. But there are a lot of people who don't come in at all anymore, and they don't want to. And they discovered that they don't have to, and now if you talk to Act 2 out in Ambler, I do. Yeah, they never have an empty seat out there. Well, I remember I did a show there. We sold out every house. Well, nowadays there's even more demand for them. Right, I mean, they could run that. Yeah, Tony's doing a wonderful job out there. Yeah, he could run that every night of the year, and it will always be full. We are sitting on the set. Yes. Blues for an Alabama Sky. Yes. By Pearl Cleage. A wonderful African-American playwright who isn't done enough. This is an amazing set. I'm looking at, it's an interior of a house, and there is a secondary space up there with a... Yes, because there are two apartments in the play. There's two apartments in the play, yep. But there's these beautiful drawings with, someone's got a sewing room here. Costume designs as part of the scenic design. How is this, when is this play? It's already running? It is. It is opening in 2 days. 2 days. So we've done 4 previews. Right. And it is maybe the biggest set that we've ever had. Yeah, it's huge. It gives the audience a lot to look at. What's great about this production is that you really, the community that you wanted to create, the light that you wanted to shed, the themes that you wanted to bring out into the world, the things you wanted to manifest are happening. Do you feel a feeling of accomplishment? Do you have that feeling like, I have done the thing I set out to do? I feel like we're getting there. When I'm going to feel... You're still getting there? When are you going to feel like you've arrived, Charles, if not now? I'm going to feel like we are there when we have got a better facility downtown. I'm saying the work. Yeah. The work that you're doing. Oh, the work. Are you doing the work that you wanted to set out to do when you're doing? We're doing most of it. Bringing the audiences that you... Are you feeling the impact upon them that you wanted to have? Yes. I think that our audience is going to be 3 or 4 times as big as it is now in about 5 years. I think we are going to get a new location downtown, and I think we're going to also reach a ton of people in the Mount Airy location. Charles, do you see yourself doing this you're in your 60s now, yes? Do you see this doing it? How much longer can you keep this up? Well, I can carry on for another 9-10 years. Okay. I will feel like I've gotten where I want to be if I can put the company in a position to hand it off to the next baton carrier, and know that we put the lantern carrier. Come on, keep the metaphor going. As the lantern carrier. Has the lantern on. Well, torch. Torch. Okay. Well, so some luminaire of some kind. Charles McMahon, thank you so much for coming with us on Adventures in Theater History. This has been an amazing conversation. Oh, thank you.
My thanks again to both Charles and Stacy for talking with me back in February of 2026. I should mention that as I record this now, in May of 2026, the Lantern has just begun its run of the play Franklinland by Lloyd Sue, starring the great Frank X as the most famous Philadelphian of all time, Benjamin Franklin. And Dave Johnson plays his son, William. The show runs through June 7th. Interestingly, during this 250th anniversary year in the city where America was founded, there is yet another play called Franklin's Key, and it is being done by the Pig Iron Theater at Plays and Players Theater. Meanwhile, I myself am currently appearing as the Reverend John Witherspoon in the Walnut Street Theater 1776 the musical through the end of May. Ben Franklin is also a character in that play, as portrayed by yet another great Philly actor of the modern era, Scott Greer. However, in our next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be speaking to Scott's wife, the actress Jennifer Childs, about her decades of work in the theater company she helped to found, which is dedicated to the genre of comedy and the history of comedy in America, 1812 Productions. Make sure to find us again on this same podcast feed for that conversation as we set off on another adventure in theater history, Philadelphia.